Now, like a lot of Star Wars fans, I was rather surprised last April when it was announced at Star Wars Celebration that one of the three new films that would be coming was to feature Rey as she rebuilt the Jedi Order. I was surprised that what could ultimately be the first movie back after what will end up being maybe a 6 or 7 year absence from theaters would include the main character from the trilogy that essentially caused that prolonged absence from theaters in the first place. And make no mistake, the downward trend of the sequel trilogy at the box office, where the third film in the trilogy made half what the first one did, no doubt caused Lucasfilm and Disney to pause and reflect on the future of Star Wars films, and it's been a very long period of pause and reflection considering, as of last month, as of December of 2023, it's now been 4 years since the last Star Wars film was released to theaters. It's been 4 years since Palpatine somehow returned in The Rise of Skywalker. And taking such a long break with Star Wars was certainly not the original plan when Disney paid roughly $4 billion for Lucasfilm a little over a decade ago, with Bob Iger, CEO of Disney, even saying at the time that the plan was to start with one movie a year and go from there. And I'm pretty sure he didn't mean they wanted to or were considering doing less than one movie a year, but rather he was hoping to be able to do more than that, kind of like how Marvel or the MCU was already sustaining an average of more than one film per year. And speaking of that, speaking of Disney purchasing Lucasfilm and the early success of the MCU, which had also recently been purchased by Disney, but it was no secret at that time, again roughly a decade ago, that one of the main reasons, maybe the main reason Disney had acquired Marvel and Lucasfilm was to bolster their offerings to a male audience. Disney and their more princess persona, you could call it, had always appealed more towards female than male audiences, and they wanted to change that in order to, make more money. And what better way to begin to do that than by acquiring two things that, if we're being honest about it, have always appealed more towards male audiences than female ones, which isn't to say there hasn't always been plenty of girls or women who are fans of these things as well, or that they can't or shouldn't be. I have zero problem with women who enjoy these things. In fact, I think it's awesome when they do, so much so that, I married a woman who loves Star Wars and comic books among other geek things, and it's pretty incredible to share that with her. I consider myself a very lucky man. But even she will acknowledge that, yes, Star Wars and comic books or superheroes or other similar things, they do tend to be something more boys-like than girls, and that is okay. Just because more men watch Star Wars or are fans of Star Wars on average does not mean there is something inherently wrong with it that needs fixing. In fact, few things irritate my wife more than hearing that something she has loved forever, something like Star Wars, that it needs to be changed or needs more women involved in order for it to be enjoyed by women. I mean, that's rather offensive to say when you really think about it. You're potentially implying there is this barrier to entry for women, that there's something about the property that prevents the average woman or girl from enjoying it, and it needs to be changed before it's something for them. Something that women can rightly and properly get into, which then says what exactly about women who have loved and enjoyed it all along? Not to mention, it also kind of implies that just because more women are now involved, it should automatically appeal to or be more enjoyed by them, independent of quality or any other standards. It kind of makes women sound simplistic and petty, that in order for them to enjoy something, it need only be created by another woman. Who cares if it's actually good or not? It also then, rather unintentionally, destroys this argument that men should be chastised if they end up not liking Star Wars that involves too many women, because you're saying it's okay for women to not like it or be able to relate to it when there's too many men involved, that they require women to make it or be heavily involved with it before it can be enjoyed by them, which then should mean, unless you want to be a hypocrite or claim men should be more sophisticated when it comes to art, but it tends to mean that men should also not be able to, or be okay not liking, something created primarily by women. I mean, you can't have it both ways here. Though in all reality, none of these premises are true. The sheer number of female Star Wars fans that are here and that have existed since day one of the franchise, as well as the male fans who love many of the great female characters in Star Wars, or many of the great female writers, directors, or whatever it might be, it really begins to shatter all these ridiculous narratives about who can like what from or about the opposite gender. But those often making these sorts of claims that think women can't love Star Wars as is for some reason, they oftentimes are not fans themselves or don't have a full understanding of it. Case in point is Kathleen Kennedy herself, who once said this when asked if she had always been a fan of Star Wars.
Are you always a Star Wars fan? I was a Star Wars fan in the fact that I had already decided to become a film major in college when the movie came out. And there's no question that it was a groundbreaking movie. I mean, what George Lucas created right from the moment New Hope was released, I think anybody and everybody, certainly that was studying film like I was, recognized that he had created something that was a complete and total game changer in the way that we tell stories.
And though I don't want to try to read too much into that answer, but to me it very much sounds like someone who not only wasn't exactly a fan of Star Wars back in the day, but still isn't a fan of Star Wars today, despite being president of Lucasfilm. And I can't help but wonder if there is almost this certain level of something along the lines of envy, or maybe even resentment when it comes to Star Wars for her. That it's something that she doesn't like because she doesn't fully understand the appeal, and as I've been saying, she therefore feels there is indeed something inherently wrong with it that needs fixing, because there are more male fans than female ones, and that's, for whatever reason, that's wrong in her eyes, or its biggest flaw for her to fix. I really don't feel like Star Wars itself, the stories, the characters, the lore, are a concern or top priority for Kathleen Kennedy, as much as I feel what can be done with it is her top priority. Which then begins to explain not only many of the problems with Star Wars today, why it's not the franchise it once was, why so many fans are so fed up with it that they feel nothing but apathy towards it, but also perhaps begins to explain why Kennedy would hire someone like Sharmeen Obaid-Chinoy to direct a Star Wars movie, to direct that Rey movie I was talking about at the top, which in itself, making a movie essentially based off a trilogy that not only saw declining box office returns, but that divided your fan base, well, that's a strange decision. But either way, I know there's been a lot of talk, a lot of videos made about both Obaid-Chinoy's recent comments and some she has made in the past, and I even made a video the other day discussing her, saying that it was about time a woman came forward to shape the story of Star Wars, which is one of the silliest things I've ever heard anyone say. But I think far more is being made of her saying that she likes to make men feel uncomfortable, which at face value is maybe the strangest thing ever said by someone who is going to direct a Star Wars movie. Again, given there are more male fans, and that the very reason Disney acquired it in the first place was to, well, make men comfortable and entertained so that they would keep opening their wallets and paying for more and more Star Wars. Though, in all fairness here, she did not say that in reference to her upcoming Star Wars movie. A lot of people, I think, are very much trying to take that out of context or purposely sort of conflate the two. Which, no, just because she didn't say it directly about her Star Wars movie doesn't necessarily make it a whole lot better, or stop any concerns for the upcoming movie, but I do think it should be made very clear she said that back in 2015, long before she was ever hired to direct a Star Wars movie. In fact, what I think I'll do now is play about a 2-minute clip from that conference where she said all of this, that the interview is kind of taken from, and again, it's back in 2015, and I'll let you hear it for yourself and formulate your own opinion on it first before I say anything more about it.
This is happening now. And so you are watching the lessons of, and it's a dramatization of the lessons of it. As an activist and an artist, do you make that calculation? Who is my target? You talked a little bit about, I want women to watch this, and I want them to feel empowered, and I want my daughter to have heroes. I couldn't help but notice a thread through each of these, that the men were assholes. And I'm wondering, as one of them, what is the balance of activating a force for change, but also trying to permeate that patriarchy, that power structure? And is that a part of the calculation of your art as well, and what's been the reaction to that?
Oh, absolutely. I like to make men uncomfortable. I enjoy making men uncomfortable. Not you, just
not you.
not you.
Point taken, point taken.
But, it is important to be able to look into the eyes of a man and say, I am here, and recognize that. And recognize that I am working to bring something that makes you uncomfortable, and it should make you uncomfortable because you need to change your attitude. And it's only when you're uncomfortable, when you're shifty, when you have to have difficult conversations, that you will perhaps look at yourself in the mirror and not like the reflection, and then say, maybe there is something wrong with the way I think, or maybe there is something wrong with the way I am addressing this issue.
And the first thing I feel like I need to do after playing that is to once again point out why Disney purchased a Lucasfilm in the first place, and it wasn't to put a bunch of asshole men on screen and to make the men who watch it feel bad about themselves. In fact, I think this is the perfect time to point out that Star Wars was originally made by George Lucas for, as he himself said, 12-year-old boys, to help bring spirituality to the young and to encourage them to find a purpose beyond the self. It was to try and make them better, not by making them feel some sort of collective guilt that she seems to feel all men should share in, because some men do bad things, not all of them, a fact she kind of unintentionally concedes when she excludes the host, Jon Stewart, from everything she's saying. But anyway, Lucas tried to bring about change by inspiring men and women and boys and girls to be better and to greatness through stories of heroism and sacrifice, to show how selflessness can be its own reward, and how selfishness inevitably will lead to ruin not only for you, but for everyone and everything around you. But of course, selflessness is hard. It's hard to let go of your pride and to do what is requested of you and what may benefit the greater good far more than the self, especially when no recognition or gratitude for it is forthcoming. And oftentimes those who are the loudest about wanting to make things better or to help you are actually trying to convince you that what's best for them is best for you when it's not. They'll try to use things like fear and guilt against you to bring about their version of a better world. And yeah, these are all things that Star Wars tries to teach you or warn you about, but all too often they seem lost on those making it or in charge of it today. Instead of lessons for anyone, it's something that needs to be for everybody, because it's not right that, again, on average, more men should be allowed to enjoy something. But in all reality, not everything needs to be for everybody. Not everything needs to be for you. In fact, that's a very selfish attitude to have, to only think about how everyone or everything else should try to accommodate your wants and desires. Or to use something loved by others to educate them about something you feel they need to be educated about. Or to never consider how others actually feel about something that they've been enjoying for as long as it has existed in some cases. I'm sorry, but your inability to understand or appreciate something for what it is does not automatically make it flawed and or in need of change. Art is not something that we should strive to see homogenized for the masses. Entertainment isn't and never should be a one-size-fits-all industry, or true creativity will die and no one will actually end up entertained by it anymore. And just because someone doesn't bend over backwards to cater to what you'd personally like to see, doesn't mean their intent is to be exclusionary or hateful. Star Wars is for anyone who wants to enjoy it for what it is, but not for everyone who wants to see it be for them. Or, and especially, it's not something to be used to make the viewer feel bad about themselves in order to make them change. It is something that was meant to inspire. Well, that's going to be all I got for you this time. Now it is your turn. Take to the comments below. Tell me what you think about all this. Tell me what you think about what Charmine Obaid-Chinoy had to say. What do you make of her comments about saying men should be made to feel uncomfortable, that she likes to see it happen? Whatever the case may be, leave those comments below and let's talk some Star Wars. And until next time, thanks for watching.